Last year at this time, I was writing in my one-bedroom apartment in Crookston, which is pretty far north. And it was probably, 47 below zero. And I pulled out this old story and started working on it. And I found this great program called the Loft Mentor Series and applied for it. And the spring came, and then the Loft showed up. They called me, and they were like, "Hey, you in Podunk, we like your writing." And so I moved here, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this program. And one of the things that I wrote about in my goal statement for this program was a desire for an artistic community, and I've been introduced to 11 amazing, big-hearted writers and 3 inspiring mentors, and I'm so grateful for this experience. And so I thank you to the Loft and Sherry and everybody who makes it happen. And I'm working on a novel in the form of a triptych, and I'm going to read you the first chapter from the first section. It is called Into the Culvert. I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior whose kingdom it stands. One Savior, crucified, risen, and coming again with life and liberty to all who believe. I bit down hard on my number 2 pencil. It broke in my mouth. The cool, smooth lead cracked over my teeth. Cloth uniforms rustled against metal chairs. Mary sighed from 2 desks over. Mrs. Anderson clicked her supervisor's pen. Theo was under his desk for the 3rd time that day, searching for something, an eraser, his pencil, his pen, a shoe. "I've warned you 3 times, Theo," Mrs. Anderson said. "I'll pray for your salvation," mumbled under her breath. I held my ear to the gray desk divider, listening to the footsteps of Pastor Johnson. Brother Woods discussed plans for Sunday morning choir songs. I rubbed 2 fingers into grooves on the particle board desk. It was hard to tell the difference between current fear and old ghosts, like the sound of Theo's voice from the furnace room where a broken wooden oar hung on the wall. Theo knew it well, and I knew Theo's screams. During recess one day, Theo and little Earl snuck into the church auditorium, dug into some storage bins outside the salvation rooms, and dressed up as Christmas angels, cherubed up real nice with rosy face paint on their cheeks, lined their mouths with red lipstick, and stepped down into the 600-gallon tub. We all knew the baptistry was off limits, unless it was Sunday and you just gave your life to the Lord. None of that mattered now. Theo and little Earl wanted to be beautiful baptizing angels. Everyone played the baptizing game. Our mouths watered at the idea of playing in the real baptistry. And at summer camps, all the kids from church would act out epic salvation and redemption scenes. Brother Wood's daughter Cassie would tell Mary she was dirty to get in the lake so that she could scrub her down with the Holy Spirit. They scrubbed Mary's skin so hard she bled from her knees and elbows. Someone played pastor, dunking the rest of us in the lake, sending us on our way to a new life for the Lord, all except for Mary, who wore tights and turtlenecks year-round to hide the skin God gave her. We played Judgment Day, too, confessing sins to a kid who played God. He'd tell each person whether or not they made it into heaven. Girls and brown kids never played God. God is a white man. Brown kids are invisible, and all girls go to hell. But that day in the baptistry, Theo and little Earl found each other's sinful parts and gave each other hummingbird kisses on them. Mrs. Anderson climbed onto the altar, snuck up over the choir loft, and peeked over the baptistry wall. She saw them there, all sparkly winged, with Theo's white gown pulled up and little Earl on his knees beneath. She screamed loud enough for the whole school to stop the kickball game and gather outside the chapel doors. Theo and little Earl covered up quickly and climbed out of the baptistry to Mrs. Anderson. They did a shame walk, and I looked at all the boy faces, knowing what they were thinking. They were sending Theo and little Earl to hell. Theo and little Earl screamed from the furnace room, and when Theo got home, Dad made him scream again. When he crawled into my bed that night, he slept on his stomach, and in the morning his backside was black and blue and green, 2 mounds of tie-dyed night. He could hardly button his pants, or sit, or walk, or do anything. Brother Woods put down his pen on the teacher's desk, walked over to Theo. His shoes squeaked across the linoleum. Theo begged Brother Woods not to take him into the furnace room. "Come with me, little brother," he said to Theo. "Pastor's waiting for you." Last week, Pastor preached a sermon on abominations, told us how God put a curse on anyone who marries outside their race. I looked at Mama, and she looked at me, and her eyes filled up with tears. Then my eyes filled up with tears. I looked at Theo, he looked at me, and we looked at Mary. We all scooted in towards her, and she opened up her mama wings and brought us all in under them. And we snuggled there on the church pew, 3 little abominations unto God. 2 nights after Theo got caught in the baptistry, Pastor preached a sermon on hellfire and brimstone for homosexuals. When he described to the church what homos did for fun, Theo's face turned into a gasp for a whole hour. He walked the Sunday aisle, bent down at the altar, and prayed in front of the congregation, crying out to God with his little fists, asking for salvation. That night he woke up in sweat and tears, nudging me awake. I'm gonna burn forever, ain't I, Seja? Pastor Johnson always shouted from his pulpit, always asking me to imagine what it would feel like to be on fire for eternity, how painful it'd be for my skin to be in flames like that. Sometimes he'd light a pile of bricks on fire and talk about weeping and gnashing of teeth. His voice, when he wasn't shouting, could be nice, like the time he looked straight into my eyes and said, "Seja, still waters run deep, and you've got still waters." Since that day in the baptistry, Pastor was on a mission, and Theo could hardly move in any direction without getting beat for it. Pastor waited in the furnace room, clearing his throat, letting us know he meant it. He was waiting for Theo, waiting to tell Theo how disappointed he was, waiting to ask Theo if he knew where he was going when he died, waiting to look straight into Theo's big brown eyes and beat the different out of him. The thoughts built up inside me. Without permission, I stood, 1 demerit, turned from my cubicle desk, 2 demerits, rushed into the direction of my brother without permission, 3 demerits. At first, no one saw that I made it to the doorway of the learning center. I pulled Mary's braid as I moved past her. She coughed in acknowledgement. Theo saw me and quieted his squirming. Mrs. Anderson reached out to grab me. I ducked under her arm. We were close enough to touch, and he wiggled out of the adult grip on him. We secured hands and shot through the orange-weighted church doors. The sun hit us hard and bright. I ran blinded by it. Theo's hand trembled. I pulled left. We passed the swing set and the slide near the south side of the building. Pastor Johnson and Mrs. Anderson were not far behind. They left the kids alone with Brother Woods. Theo and I had a better chance of escape if we could at least make it to the small forest of trees behind the church, a place we knew well after years of rapture and tribulation games. We reached the thick part of the trees and dropped behind old Alma, where we carved our names just 2 days ago. Through the trees, I watched Pastor searching for us. The wind blew his comb over to the left. It was the first time I saw him so untidy. Mrs. Anderson jogged behind, tripping over her ankle-length jean jumper. They said nothing, only moved faster through the field. Mary, the family runner, broke through the fold of adults. The woods were just as familiar to her, and she found us at old Elma right away. Theo's eyes shot in all directions of the woods. He stepped back on a rock jutting out from the ground and fell face first into a tree. He cried, and I took off my sweater to catch the blood pouring out of his nose. "I'm scared, Seja," Theo said. "They're going to give it to us, then Dad's going to give it to us. Hold my hand, Theo. We're getting out of here." "Don't let them paddle me no more, Seja, please," Theo said. "We've got to move then, Theo. You got to get up." But Theo's fear got the best of him, and Mary told me to go. Mary said she'd make things better and that I should get going or they'd beat me next. Theo's face curled into tears, and my heart curled up into my chest, felt like it had no place to go. They were getting closer. Mary wiped Theo's eyes and told him to take 3 breaths. We took deep breaths together. "Now get out of here," "Now get out of here, Seja," Mary said, and I did. I charged through the last of the trees, towards the gravel road and into the sugar beet fields, where there were deep ditches and caves of culverts for miles. The wind stirred all around, every branch snapping underfoot. I dove into the ditch, through old dead leaves crouching inside a moist circular cement refuge about a mile past the church. It was a great big culvert, dry this time of year, caked with summer's dirt runoff. The harvested fields all around allowed me to see who was coming and how much time I might have. Since the day my mother brought Theo home from the hospital, I was his guardian. My mother said I'd stand over his crib watching him sleep, that I'd put my teddy in next to him and sing him Father Abraham. I was the littlest sister until he came along, determined to care for him, to love him, to accept him because he was mine, my only little brother, and it seemed to me that the world was trying to destroy him, but I couldn't save him, and every time I thought about him lying in the forest, a cold wind blew from inside my chest, gave me goosebumps all over. When the darkness set, I could see a few circles of light jumping around in the fields. I whispered songs. I did a quiet dance. I took off my clothes. I sat with my naked butt in the dirt and dug a hole in the ground where I laid out my church school clothes. Shirt flat, skirt flat, socks flat. Shirt arms crossed at the waist, skirt below. I stuffed my socks in at the bottom, put my shoes at each cloth ankle. It was beautiful to look at my church self lying in the dirt, but I buried her fast and furious, packing dirt onto each cloth body part, kicking up a dust storm in the culvert, coughing as it settled. I made little stick crosses and placed them on my mound. I collected a pile of rocks and kissed them one by one, laying them in a circle around the crosses. I laid down next to my buried church self and wrapped my arms around her. I sang her a song. Pass me not, O gentle Savior, hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling, do not pass me by. Thou the spring of all my comfort, more than life to me. Whom have I on earth beside thee? Whom in heaven but thee? Thank you.